So here we are, about an hour after Rachel Reeves has sat back down in the House of Commons on Budget Day, November the 26th, 2025. And thank goodness she did sit down, because she spoke for about an hour and 15 minutes. And yeah, towards the end, it just got worse and worse and worse for us ordinary, hardworking people. You know, those people that she actually said in the run-up to the general election, and then again in the budget of November 2024, the hardworking people that she would not tax more, that she would not affect. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, she absolutely went back on that, and she has taxed most of us, certainly those that earn a reasonable wage, and those that work hard, those that have businesses, those that save, those that pay into pensions. So basically, the engine of Britain and Middle England and the British economy, she has, as all Labour chancellors ultimately do by way of their warped leftist ideology, she has put the squeeze on most of us. And I'm going to run through in a second exactly what she did. But the headline here, apart from the trailing of the budget in the weeks up to it, and on the morning, so this morning, the absolute travesty, the catastrophe, the incompetent actions of the Office of Budget Responsibility, which of course this government leans into on rather a regular basis to try and make themselves and the data within this government in terms of economic output look good. Well, that OBR, that Office of Budget Responsibility being the operative word here, by the way, leaked the budget about an hour before Rachel Reeves took to her feet. What an absolute bunch of morons we are governed by. Now, of course, Rachel Reeves immediately threw the OBR under the bus, so it was nothing to do with her. But of course, look, the OBR effectively is the government's kind of data department. They are in lockstep, they're in cahoots. So it might not have been Rachel Reeves that leaked it, or was it, I wonder. Maybe it was someone mischievous within the OBR that decided to leak it by putting it on their website a couple of hours before they should have done, just to cause Rachel Reeves a bit of trouble, because perhaps they realised what a travesty of a budget this was. So look, we knew it was going to be a shit show, but I don't think we quite knew that it was going to be a shit show across the piece. And what I mean by that is the fact that she's raised a further £26 billion, or seeks to. Let's see if it actually works in terms of what it does raise, in addition to the £40 billion that she raised in the November 2024 budget. Not forgetting that she said in her manifesto promises that she wouldn't raise taxes, and over the last two budgets she's done that not once but twice, to the tune now of £66 billion. But here's the thing, the people that she has targeted, the people she's focused on, the people that she has affected are those hardworking people, and all so that she can give the majority of the money to people that are on benefits. So she is giving more money away in terms of an increase in the rate of benefit to many benefit receivers. She's also scrapped the 2-child benefit cap, which means now that for a family that has 6 kids, they will receive up to another £14,000 of taxpayers' money every year, just because Rachel Reeves has decided to play to her audience, her left-wing ideological audience, really, which is those that perhaps don't earn as much as others. So she's playing to a crowd. She's also introduced an increase in the minimum wage of up to 8%. So an inflation-busting increase in the minimum wage, which of course is not paid by the government, it's paid by business owners, hardworking bosses, entrepreneurs and investors in business. So that, as we've seen in the hospitality sector, since she did that previously, that obviously is going to hurt particularly those businesses that pay a minimum wage and work on low margins, like hospitality. So while she thinks she's doing the right thing by way of those workers on a minimum wage, what we'll now see over the next 12 to 24 months or so is, unfortunately, lots and lots of those workers being laid off, made redundant, because many of the businesses won't be able to afford to pay that hike, and they will close. That's the unintended consequence of one of Rachel Reeves' moves today. It reminds me of that old Thatcher saying that the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. And I think we've seen some real examples of that kind of ham-fisted, unintended consequence approach to the budget and the economy from Rachel Reeves today. Let's just run through some of the things that she's done then. There aren't many benefits unless you're on benefits, frankly, but these are some of the things she's done. So she hasn't increased the rate of tax in terms of the percentage tax that you pay, but through a bit of a bit of sleight of hand, she has frozen the tax thresholds, which means if you currently earn below the threshold above which you pay tax, with wage growth as it is, which is about 5% per annum currently, over the next 3 years, whilst that threshold stays as it is, it means that as you get an increase in wage, you will pay more tax in 2026, 2027 and 2028 than you are now. That is particularly true if you end up going from the standard, the basic rate of tax, to the 40%, 45% rate if you breach that £55,000 threshold. So it's estimated that about 1.7 million people will now pay more tax as a consequence of what Rachel Reeves has announced today in terms of that income tax threshold freezing. That doesn't smack to me of being particularly honest or in keeping with what Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have said in recent months, particularly in the run-up to the general election and since, and up to and beyond the November 2024 budget, insofar as them not penalising ordinary, hard-working people. No, it's not just waspy women, it's not just pensioners and business owners and farmers. She has now gone for a large swathe of ordinary Middle England, ordinary earning people. Property and landlords. Landlords, they fill a huge gap that's left by the absence of social housing, the absence of social housing being built in sufficient enough numbers over many, many decades. Landlords fill that gap by providing choice of property to tenants, to renters, and including lots and lots of people on housing benefit. Now, of course, if you continue to penalise landlords, as Rachel Reeves has done again by turning the screws on them even further today, by introducing a 2% increase in the tax they pay on their income, whether they're basic rate or high rate taxpayers, well, frankly, you're going to scare those landlords away, and eventually there'll be so few landlords, there'll be a property shortage, and people won't have anywhere to live by way of them being prospective tenants. The other thing it will do in terms of that demand increasing, which happens because obviously we have a population growing through immigration by about 700,000 people a year, you'll end up with a reduction in the amount of those properties available, and that in itself will increase rents. So again, unintended consequences. The very people that Rachel Reeves is kind of pretending that she has the back of will be the ones that suffer as a consequence of some of the decisions that she and Keir Starmer have made today, and indeed have made in recent months. The other thing, of course, is anyone that dares to live in a property that's worth over £2 and then over £5 million will now see from April 2028 a mansion tax imposed through the council tax system, where those with properties between £2 and £5 million will pay another £2,500 a year in council tax, whilst receiving obviously nothing extra in return from their local authority. But if you live in a property over £5 million of value, you'll pay £7,500 extra per annum. So again, politics of envy, the green-eyed monster playing to a left-wing Labour backbench crowd here really is Rachel Reeves by ticking a box to say, don't worry, I'll run after those nasty wealth creators, those horrible business owners that employ 16 million people in Britain. Absolute crazy, crazy stuff. Electric vehicle owners, you thought you were safe because you were saving the planet. Well, you're not, because today Rachel Reeves has imposed a 3p per mile levy on the use of your electric vehicle. This again is the unintended consequence of subsidising and pushing electric vehicles over and above diesel and petrol vehicles, which they themselves would obviously be subject to fuel duty on. So now, as a consequence of 20 to 25% of new cars that are sold being EVs, means that there's now less coming into the exchequer in terms of fuel duty. So she has had to tax you. So you may have bought your Tesla or whatever with good meaning and with best intentions. Well, you're being taxed as well. Drinkers, alcohol duty is going up. Smokers, tobacco duty is also going up. Vapers, vape duty is also going to increase. And of course, the famed and well-trailed milkshake tax will be introduced. So when you next go into McDonald's to get your chocolate thick shake, you can expect to pay more Again, so that people that are on benefits and decide to have large families can take tens of thousands of pounds a year from you as a consequence of that money ending up in the exchequer. And we haven't even got started, because it wasn't really talked about today, on the likes of net zero, foreign aid, and the cost of asylum to this country. That's let's just park those tens of billions of pounds a year to one side for a second. Gamblers also, if you fancy a little flutter and you like to have a flutter online every now and again, you're now going to be subject to a tax too. And then savers, again, you would imagine savers would be sacrosanct. Savers that put their money into financial institutions, that those financial institutions then lend to, again, keep the property market going and small business loans going and so on, would know you have now seen your threshold on an ISA reduced from £20,000 to £12,000. So in other words, now anything you earn in savings interest on amounts above £12,000 will be taxed, whereas previously you were protected up to £20,000. So that's just cost you about £400. And business owners, obviously business owners are never going to get off the hook. Not only have they now got to pay more in national insurance for their employees and more in minimum wage, as I've said, but also if they decide to build a business, take risk, put their lives and their houses on the line and end up with a business that's worth some money that they then decide to sell to their employees, well, I'm afraid that instead of that now being exempt from capital gains tax, Rachel Reeves has just taken away that exemption to the tune of 50% relief now applying rather than 100%. So in other words, a significant increase in the tax levy from people having to pay that tax if they sell their business to their employees. Rachel Reeves talked a lot about entrepreneurialism and SMEs and hardworking people taking risk. It doesn't seem that with regards to what she actually does in action, that her actions follow her rhetoric, does it? But then I guess we expect that from the Labour government, don't we? That words are cheap and not always in tune with the reality of what the Labour Party actually does. And then finally, as if that wasn't all enough, pensions, salary sacrifice schemes, where you can, instead of taking the salary, put your money into a pension and it would be somewhat protected from a taxation point of view. Well, that is now going to be diluted in terms of that benefit in order to raise nearly £5 billion from that particular policy. And again, I remind you where that money is going. It's going to asylum, to net zero, to public sector wage increases, and for an increase in benefits to the 22 million people that currently are on benefits one way or the other in this country, and a benefit bill of some £150 billion. Well, that's just increased, and you are paying for it through your pension suffering, as well as your savings and as well as your income. So not a very cheery budget, I have to say. Pretty negative, pretty bad for hard-working, ordinary people, but great if you don't want to work, you don't want to do much, and you don't want to skill up and contribute to society. So congratulations to those that have benefited, and commiserations to just about everybody else that just wants to work hard and earn a living. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. I think it's an absolute utter disgrace. It's sixth form politics of envy, ideological politics being played out in real life to the expense of the vast majority of people in what was once Great Britain. Let me know what you think in the comments. And please, if you like what I'm doing here in terms of my opinions on various things as they pop into my head and I resort to video like this, well then please not just like but also subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with more rants and more opinion soon. Thanks for watching.